Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, guys. So, how I found this blog initially was through Alonzo's blog, and I liked a lot of what Alonzo was posting, but I didn't like that he was hating on Aaron Levin Smith, which makes me very suspicious. He was hating on Aaron Levin Smith and Mark Bunker, like for various things, and also saying that they were reporting the Scientology story regarding Kyle Brennan. And my opinion is, more than likely, Aaron didn't come upon more information. Because, Aaron Smith Levin keeps it real, and I really admire Mark Bunker. So, that's all I got to say. So, now what I'm going to read is from Victoria Brennan's blog, and it's very interesting. She's Kyle's mother, and it's very interesting that in this day and age, it seems like that's the only way people can get justice. Because it doesn't seem like a whole lot of justice is being served. And as far as the whole Diddy thing, my question is this. Hold on. And I'm not disputing that Diddy hasn't done these awful things. But my opinion is, all the other heinous, disgusting, repugnant, awful, reprehensible things that are going on in the world, like trafficking babies and infants and children, as well as the whole organ harvesting. Ain't shit being done about that. But, we know what's up. Anyways. So I'm just leaving the picture up while I read from this. I believe it is a blog. Or it could be a website. So Scientology and the death of Kyle Brennan. The truth for Kyle. A trifecta of injustice. And then I can't read that quote, so you guys are going to have to read that. A trifecta of injustice. Scientology and the death of Kyle Brennan. First described by Sigmund Freud, compartmentalization is a coping mechanism that helps people deal with trauma, grief, and emotional distress. Instead of addressing troubling issues head on, people will often separate and file these stressors in psychological lockboxes, allowing them to focus on specific tasks without being overwhelmed. In this manner, compartmentalizing provides relief. It enables an individual to function in everyday life. After losing my son Kyle, I quickly learned it was imperative to master this mental tactic. My life had become an escalating nightmare. Pigeonholing my horrors became a necessary means of survival and self-preservation. Most importantly, compartmentalizing helped me deal with what happened next. In the spring of 2007, 6 weeks after Kyle's death, and but a few days after what would have been his 21st birthday, a phone call to the Clearwater Police Department set in motion a previously unthinkable sequence of events. It began with me asking basic questions about the circumstances surrounding Kyle's untimely passing. My son, at the time of his death, the night of February 16th, was visiting his father, Tom Brennan, an avid Scientologist. Brennan was sharing the apartment with fellow Scientologist Eddie Childers, who may have had critical information about the weapon that killed Kyle. I'll bet Eddie Childers is still in there. The details of what happened that evening didn't appear to be on the up and up. For example, family members were given contradictory information, and the unprofessional behavior of the Clearwater police detective presiding over the investigation of Kyle's death was troubling. Names. We need names. I know why she's not naming names, but you and I both know it'd be very easy to find. Crooked-ass cops. What followed became an additional source of pain and unimaginable frustration in my attempt to uncover the truth. I discovered a pattern of behavior throughout law enforcement, an underlying reluctance to pursue a case involving the Church of Scientology. Surprisingly, this disinclination was consistent all across the agencies whose members had sworn to protect and defend: the Clearwater Police Department, the CPD, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the FDLE, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Let me say that again. The Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI. It started, of course, with the Clearwater Police. My later complaints to the FDLE and the FBI focused primarily on one detective employed in that department, Stephen Bowling. Spelled Bohling. First name Stephen, Stephen. For starters, he blatantly ignored standard police procedures. Oh, it sounds like the LAPD. He never visited the apartment where my son died. Wow. That's not a botched investigation. That's cover-up. And he never questioned the conflicting stories told by the Scientologists involved. Scientologists who were at the apartment where Kyle died when the police arrived. Detective Bowling lied when he told us that a gunshot residue, or GSR, test had not been performed on my son's hands. We later learned that a GSR test had been done, but Bowling testified he withheld it from being analyzed, and it subsequently and mysteriously went missing. The list pertaining to Stephen Bowling's incompetence, lies, and subsequent perjury is long, provable, and documented. Most police departments have an internal affairs division responsible for investigating misconduct, allegations, and disciplining officers who misuse their power to fabricate evidence. Not so evidently in Clearwater, Florida, home to the worldwide headquarters of the Church of Scientology. Me personally, I think a lot of times these internal affairs are completely crooked. Since moving into downtown Clearwater under an assumed name in 1975, the church has had a long and controversial history with the city's police. As Scientology grew in Clearwater, it often hired local off-duty police officers as a private security force. Detective Bowling was one of those policemen on Scientology's part-time payroll. During the discovery phase of Kyle's case, Bowling stated under oath that he was friends with the Church of Scientology's legal director, Sarah Heller, who incidentally sat alongside the Scientology lawyers, observing and taking notes during the depositions. Wasn't this a conflict of interest? Yeah, I've been saying that for how long? Based on this friendship and his part-time employment status, shouldn't Bowling have had another detective investigate my son's death? How had these relationships affected the investigation and civil suit proceedings? Money to go around everywhere, isn't there? The weeks passed with no follow-up call from Detective Bowling. Left with no answers to my numerous questions, I contacted him in August 2007 for an update. When I asked the detective if he'd asked Brennan when the ammunition for the weapon was purchased, Bowling responded angrily and callously. He said that as far as he was concerned, if Kyle's father bought the ammunition on this day he died, threw it on the bed with the weapon, and told Kyle to go play with it, that would be fine with him. Wow. It's too bad she didn't have that on recording. Not that any motherfucking buddy's gonna do anything, but hey. Bowling's indifference and unprofessional behavior were deeply troubling. My main takeaway from the conversation was that I needed to create a paper trail to document our interactions. Nothing is worse than being right about a situation and unable to prove it. At that point, I knew any complaints I made about Detective Bowling would result in a he said, she said standoff. That's what I was thinking. I needed to document his behavior. Assume nothing, corroborate everything. In the autumn of 2008, with the 2-year statute of limitations looming, my son's case remained open. Even with my lawyer tracking the investigation, no new information was forthcoming, including the much-needed update regarding an interview with Scientologist Eddie Childers. This is when I learned that Bowling never followed up with his search for Tom Brennan's roommate. Wow. I felt that an interview with Childers would have been crucial to the investigation. I feared the statute of limitations would expire before I could review the police report. Troubled over the situation, I contacted Senator Bill Nelson of Florida and Senator Jim Webb of Virginia to voice my concerns. In my experience dealing with the Clearwater Police, these senators were the only public servants who willingly helped me. The case closed soon afterward. In 2012, I filed a complaint regarding Kyle's death investigation with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE. From there, it traveled to the Executive Office of the Governor during the reign of Rick Scott. Susan L. Smith, the criminal justice liaison working in Governor Scott's legal office, was given my documents. A heated argument now ensued between these two Florida entities, with Smith saying it was the FDLE's responsibility to investigate my complaint, and the FDLE retorting, "You tell Smith she's not putting this case on us." Wow. Pathetic. My complaint got lost in the shuffle, caught up in a never-ending legal loop of going nowhere. I also wonder, I've seen this kind of tactic done so many times, I also wonder if that's part of like what they do to just like fake that they're doing something, and it's just, just to not do anything. I mean, you can't even call it gaslighting. It's like so orchestrated. Like they're pretend arguing with each other and then nothing ever gets done. I don't know if that's true, but I've seen it a lot. Early in the investigation of Kyle's death, I firmly believe that the Clearwater Police Department was not conducting a proper investigation of his death. I contacted the FBI, and this initial correspondence provided much needed documentation. It was necessary, even though I had little to no expectation that it would culminate in Bowling's removal. According to the U.S. Department of Justice website, its mission is to enforce federal laws, seek just punishment for the guilty, and ensure justice is fair and impartial administration. The DOJ administers the criminal laws with the highest level of truth and morals to conduct fair and equal administration of the law to everyone, without corruption, favor, greed, or prejudice for those who practice law and enforce justice. So they say. The FBI office was casual except for the intimidating walk-through metal detector that greeted you when you first entered. A long utilitarian table dominated the small room. The agent I spoke with was polite and businesslike. The interview lasted just over an hour. Resting on my lap were several thick file folders. "Are those files for me?" asked the agent as I rose out of the chair to leave. "They are," I responded. "The documents in the folder will corroborate everything we've discussed today. I've also attached a letter from an agent who worked undercover with the Department of Justice. He's carefully analyzed the Clearwater Police report and Detective Stephen Bowling's investigative procedures. He concluded that the investigation was replete with conflicts of interest or mishandled investigative procedures." Well, that's a positive right there. "Can I see that letter?" After quickly reading it, she agitatedly exclaimed, "I'm calling Florida today." Oh, that makes me feel happy. Like it feels like something's getting done. A month after my first visit to the FBI, I received a follow-up call asking if I had additional documentation or evidence to give them. Of course I complied. 2 years came and went when a letter from the Department of Justice in Washington arrived at my home. The brief paragraph stated that they had received the case file regarding Kyle's death investigation. It also advised that they were not obligated to tell me how they would proceed with the investigation or, if at all. The DOJ also said they did not want me to speak about the situation publicly. That makes sense. This correspondence certainly could have been perceived as intimidating. Perhaps it could silence some, but I'm not one of those people. What I discovered is deeply unsettling. A broken justice system. I never suspected malfeasance in dealing with the FDLE and the FBI. Yet again and again, the message came through loud and clear. Trepidation and fear led to an unwillingness to investigate. The Church of Scientology. Me personally, you guys, I don't believe in all this fear. I think fear is just a big cover. Yes, like 30, 40 years ago, they had more power. But give me a break that they're going to overpower the FBI. Back in the 50s they did it, but they ain't doing that again. So me personally, I don't buy that fear stuff. Police agencies, public figures, and most politicians do not want to tangle with the church, even if it means overlooking criminal behavior. Over the years, the organization's First Amendment protection, along with its reputation for threatening destruction to anyone who crosses their path, have served them well. Someone, somewhere, however, has the information needed to put an end to this criminal enterprise masquerading as a religion. Someone, somewhere, sometime will stand up and say enough. You would hope so, right? 2024, we're still waiting. While all those little children, those young children, are locked up in auditing rooms in Florida and other places, forced to stay in those rooms, forced to stand still, forced to ask sexual questions. Till this day. In Keeping Silent About Evil, wrote Alexander I. Solzhenitsyn, in burying it so deep within us that no sign of it appears on the surface, we are implanting it, and it will rise up 1,000-fold in the future. When we neither punish nor reproach evildoers, we are not simply protecting their trivial old age. We are thereby ripping the foundations of justice from beneath new generations. And then there's a copyright, Victoria L. Britton, all rights reserved. No part of this post may be reused or reprinted without the author's permission. It's really small print. Okay, so this is from, the letter that I'm going to read is from I think it's from the Department of Justice. It's not telling me. It is my conclusion that the Brennan investigation was a farce. Oh, this is the letter she sent to them, I believe. Every single statement of fault claimed in blank letter is supported by the documents in this case. The most concerning problems with the investigation relate to the lies perpetuated by the Clearwater Police Department about their so-called consultations with Dr. McNamara, the ongoing confusion surrounding the gunshot residue testing, or lack of, the inconsistencies relating to the existing of suicide notes. Yeah, I noticed that too. And the nature of those notes, and the quandaries of the reporting of the sequences of events the night of Kyle's death. It is clear to me that there is some connection between the Church of Scientology and Clearwater Police Department, including the relationship between Detective Bowling and the COS, and that this investigation is replete with conflicts of interest and mishandled standard investigative procedures. That could go for LAPD as well. How many murders have they covered up? Bluicides, you know? I am in full support of blank and would urge you and your office to take any steps you are able to in order to advance an independent investigation that could determine what really occurred back in February 2007. Sincerely, okay, so Victoria Brennan didn't write this. It was another doctor. Sincerely, they don't have a signature, Dr. blank blank, and then JD, PhD. Chair of Criminal Justice Studies. I don't know what I'm reading, you guys. Hold on. So they're ending this article really kind of odd. But anyways, there's this little paragraph. I don't know where this is from. Question. Now, what complaints did either Victoria Britton or the family make against you that you had to be investigated, that you just referenced there? Answer. There was a call to the Justice Department, and I believe that it went over to the FBI to follow up on that. Basically that I just was not doing my job, and they believe that the case should be turned over to somebody else. So that's it. Very sad. Woman loses her son, and she asks for help from the Department of Justice, and it seems to me like they didn't really help her. The FBI, I think it was the FBI, but I know Department of Justice is in there somewhere. So, tragic. So, my opinion is, and I always like what BJ Investigate says, facts ain't defamation. I love how she says that. It's my opinion that this was not a suicide, a bluicide. I don't believe that. And it was all covered up, and nobody did anything about it. So that's it, you guys. I will put the link in the description box. Peace. Have a good day or a good night wherever you are.